This is the Lambda Cartel. We is OD Mekdu, Stop Nimrod, and I am Pablo Rivera. Today we're going to be doing updates, talking about what we're gonna work in next, and we have a couple of interesting topics. So Odie, let's start with you.
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Yeah, I've been up to a lot of things. So I was able to get like leave from 2 weeks leave. So I've just been hacking away on Nikeza, making videos, editing. The things I did over the past week was what do they call it? The build pipeline, setting up the build pipeline for both the client and the server, including so many videos. I did a video on setting up Giraffe with F Sharp and connecting the YouTube API that Mitchell worked on. So those are the major things I did last week.
That's great. Anything else to add?
Not really. No. It's been an experience. Okay, so if I think I have a few things to add. Well, because we're on the bleeding edge with the .NET Core and all of that. You start to notice all these weird edge cases and stuff like that. Like one of the weird edge cases is that if you use it's probably bugs that should go and file the respective repositories. But there was a video I did. I did a video on the build pipeline. I also did another video on like the release pipeline, where to show how to take builds that have already been made and actually deploy them to a live running Azure website, and that ended up becoming such a pain because the current template for the Giraffe API or whatever, it doesn't generate web.config. So, and when you deploy it, you have to deploy it with a web.config. And even when I was able to like get the web.config on the server, it just didn't work for some crazy reason. So I just kind of gave up at that point and just said, let me just even ship the video on the build pipeline, because I think that is important for anyone at all, not just if you are doing F Sharp or whatever the case might be. That said, I think I've always known, and I think it's actually the right time to focus on Docker containers to like ship, to build, publish our apps and to Azure. I've never used Docker before. So up until this point, everything I've done, whether it's the build pipeline, whether it's the using .NET Core and so on, I've had like enough experience, because all those applications I showed you, the Nigeria Weather, the software lab, they're all running .NET Core. So I have, just say production grade apps. So I've gone through the whole process with those applications. However, with this one, I haven't used Docker before. So I think I have a lot to learn. And I think Mitchell will be able to help us out with that, because I'm still trying to figure. I have a very firm idea of the concept. I even have it installed here as well, but I've never actually used it to ship an app. I don't know what, like where the gotchas are. So that's essentially where I am. So I think moving forward, I will just start looking at, figuring out how to do Docker containers and so on and so forth. Thankfully, Azure has Docker support. So if you have a Docker container, you can just push it straight to Azure and they will host it for you with automated scaling and all that. So that shouldn't be such a problem. In fact, even the Visual Studio Team Services build pipeline also has support for Docker containers as well. The problem is I have no idea how to do it properly, how to like deploy a Docker container. So all the help I can get will be highly appreciated.
Oh, this is great stuff, because these are the kind of things that people are going to hit on production, and so as we move along and document them, so I feel that we should write about this and blog about it, so that the community out there starts to have some real world usage examples of what you're going to find, And that feedback, we could also take it and give it to Microsoft and to the .NET Core team and say, hey, you know, we're bumping into these issues. You probably know about them, and if they don't, then you know, we contributed to, you know, to their workflow. So either way, I think it's a win-win, and that's just great. That one of my biggest worries was deploying .NET Core, and the things you're bumping into, they're just, you know, gold in terms of how valuable those issues are to resolve.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But one last thing too is that I wanted to mention is that I think even if not for anything, right, knowledge is actually very, very important, because up until Docker, it was difficult to push a new stack to an existing shop. So say, for example, an existing shop is a .NET shop, right? And you wanted to push, I don't know, Python, for example, or Haskell, or, you know, any of the functional languages. It will be difficult because they have essentially build pipelines, hosting, and that is not the app itself. So if, you know, we can learn Docker, not just Docker, container technology in general, easier to adopt, you know, functional languages like F# or whatever you may have, you know. So and it comes at zero cost, because so if you have any service that supports any hosting, any provider that supports containers, it should just work. Now, in terms of Lambda Cartel, why I said, you know, containers are really important for us is that I want it to be that we are not tied to any stack or any infrastructure or any I don't know. We should not have any loyalty per se, except maybe to functional languages, but it should be such that we can decide to say, okay, let's pick Amazon, or let's pick Google Kubernetes, or let's pick whatever we want and use whatever stack we want, as long as it gets the job done. And containers is a great way of ensuring that once you've built your app, you can deploy it anywhere and you're not tied to any specific cloud provider or whatever like that. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, I think that's the right approach, because people who are following this project can also load up whatever it is that we're doing and, you know, try it out or just start writing code with us. So thank you, Odie, for that update. And now Scott Nimrod.
Where do I start? I got the official Nikeza logo completed. I really like it, man. And I got a splash screen video that incorporates the Nikeza logo. I published that Nikeza animation intro to a video that I published maybe a couple hours ago about my 5th week of my journey learning Elm. In addition to all that, I added a navigation panel to the Nikeza portal, meaning that when you log in to Nikeza, then you have your dashboard, and so you can do navigation to view your sources, view your links, add a new link, etc. Edit your profile. So I added navigation, and as I said earlier, I recorded a code review video earlier this morning with Mitch. So that's what I completed since last time we got together. The issues that I'm running into is I'm unable to run unit tests on the Elm client. I put a bounty up on Stack Overflow, and I have yet to have anybody answer my issue. In addition to that, I spent 3 mornings trying to resolve a bug on the Nikeza client for filtering and navigation on this. When you log in on the portal's all content page, there's the navigation buttons don't really do anything when you click them, and the filtering doesn't work at all. Like, none of that stuff is responsive, you know? So I need someone to take a look at it, even if you're not, even if you don't know Elm, if you just know a little bit of it, like this is something I'm struggling with, and I'll probably like go on some other medium or platform to have someone help me resolve this, because this is the last major thing that I'm aware of, or major piece of functionality that I'm aware of before I start implementing the subscription domain for Nikeza.
We should, you should try Twitter.
Okay.
Like just use the Elmlang hashtag.
Yeah.
And ask the question, and you know, one technique I use is that I go to the I would go to the Elm you know, official account on Twitter. I would see who is following it, and maybe I would try and find those that are, you know, seem to have more experience about it, the people who talk about it the most.
Yep.
And just mention them on one message, not like a lot of them in one tweet, but just tweet about the issue directly to that person with the hashtag.
Okay.
And you know, yeah.
In addition to that, I'm unable to load a .NET Core solution. So that Nikeza server solution, I prefer when I'm doing F#. I'm in love with Visual Studio. And well, I'm not able to get it to load. And I thought I heard someone or read from someone that .NET Core isn't supported in Visual Studio 2017, which I find hard to believe. It's Visual Studio.
You better believe it, bro.
I mean,
welcome. Archive that until I'm done, but that's something that I really struggle to believe. But anyway,
welcome to the winner of Visual Studio. Visual Studio Code is taking over.
We could discuss that later. Hold up, let me finish. On my to-do, I have after this filtering and navigation bug is resolved on the portal's all content page, then, well, one is that's on my list of to do is figure out how to resolve that, and then once that is resolved, I could start beginning work on basically the subscriptions feature. And in addition to that, I need to go to the Lambda Cartel Nikeza wiki page, and I'm just going to delete all the duplicated blog posts that I've written and just provide links and basically encourage other people to just add their links to that wiki page based on whatever topics. And that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you, Scott. So me,
Sorry, can I say something real quick?
Sure, please.
I'm just going over the changes that Mitchell made, and oh my God, this guy is on fire. I'm serious. Like he's like, oh my God, this is like.
You talking about the Docker, or are you talking about the YouTube integration?
I'm talking about the server. You know, he said something about he did a lot of refactoring on the server and so on and so forth for the YouTube API. Do you remember?
Yeah, we recorded
a video like that
together. Yeah.
Wow, this is just epic. I don't know what to say, but I'm lost for words. Anybody who has time, just go check it out. Like everything I had in mind to do, but either A, I didn't know how to go about it, or B, I was too tired to start, searching for it. The guy has implemented all of it, including cookie authentication, using the cookie middleware, setting status code, everything essentially. So this is like the basic framework for building any app, right? Like anytime I do .NET Core development, right, I go through this whole process of setting up authentication middleware and so on and so forth, and he did all of that. That is just so impressive. My God. Anyway,
it was brilliant. It was brilliant, and it just shows that each of us are gonna have those kind of moments, because I wish we could all be like that all the time, but we're not. But each of us, like Scott had those weeks where he was just banging out Elm, like a, like really quickly. Now Mitchell, and I know Odie, you've had your moments, and I know you're gonna keep having them. And
he's pumping out videos right now.
Yeah, videos. So.
Which I mean, which are not, which you'd say, well, they're videos, but I mean, they are very, very important to our mission, right? Not only the code, but sharing that content and sharing that knowledge.
Yeah.
So to my update, let's see. I just pushed a new version of the website. It has the member information. I will continue to further improve the design. This is version 0.2 of the website. Actually 0.3. And it looks okay. It works okay. I already had some feedback from Odie and from Scott, which I will definitely look into. I've been doing, so this is, okay, so let me talk about the code. So I wrote some code for the backend to the RSS integration with WordPress. I have code that barely works, but that can pretty much describe most of the code I write. It barely works, and I'm just getting a hang of the structure. So ASP.NET Core and Giraffe, it's very different to what I've normally done in, for example, Ruby on Rails, Node, or Django. The way the directory structure is different, and so I've been learning that, like the meta information about how to organize the project and the code. And I think I have a good basic grasp on it, and I feel very confident moving forward. I also fixed a little bug on Nikeza, some CSS bug. That was fun. Just finding typos. No, I love those little bugs because they make me feel like contributing, and I'm getting things moving forward, even if it's something simple, I'm also working on the join/sign up page, adding like a better design. That's going to be a video itself. I've been doing the planning for that. I'm going to do a
Are you talking about Nikeza, or are you talking about Lambda Cartel?
No, Nikeza.
Okay.
I'm going to do a video on my whiteboard, and I'll talk about the design and all that. Because I like to, when it comes to design, I like to do it on the whiteboard and explain like why and all that stuff, and just help me like flush out the things, the idea. And lastly, but not last, let's see. Oh, so I've been doing this. I know you've seen it. I've been doing this graphics. From the last podcast, I did a graphic, an image sort of meme that said Elm Up in very colorful colors, and I posted it to Twitter. Then I posted it to my personal Instagram account, which is PR Yellow, same as the same as my Twitter tag. And on Instagram, it got a fairly good amount of attention. Mind you, I don't really use Instagram that much, so it's not like I have 1 million followers. And then I created another one about F#. That was about that. The message, it was sharpening that F#, like improve your F# skills. And it's like a poster or a wallpaper that you can put on your phone or on your computer. And then I made another design called Let's Get Functional. with the Lambda Cartel logo in the background. Uh, and that one, not to exaggerate, but in my words, blew up because it immediately had more than 30 likes. And this is from someone who has 22 followers on Instagram. So what I realized is that there is a huge amount of demand on Instagram for functional topics for Elm or F#, and I'm going to focus a little bit of time in order to grow the Lambda Cartel brand there. One thing is, I'm gonna check and see if I can create like a Lambda Cartel account separate from mine. But if not, then I'll continue as is. But in total, about 100 likes from 3 images that I did, and I'm not like a really good designer, so that made me feel pretty good. And that's it.
Have we considered? Okay, are we done with the status update?
Yes.
Okay. Does it make sense? And this is kind of like an oxymoron, I think, but does it make sense to create an official Lambda Cartel account on LinkedIn, in which we also publish our articles and videos on there?
Absolutely. I haven't gotten to that point yet, because LinkedIn is its own like world, and I was waiting to iron out first the website, the domain, right? I wanted to have like the requirements in order to then post it to LinkedIn.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you can definitely just open it now and then we'll just fill it up later. Like, I have a LinkedIn profile myself that's empty because I've been working on, developing it, but I just been busy and thinking about how to approach it, because it's very important how you do it in terms of marketing and employability. So yeah. So what's next? What do you plan to do next, Scott?
After that bug that is like torturing me gets fixed, I would like to start implementing I don't mind doing the entire thing from front to back, but implementing the subscriptions feature.
That's cool. That's good.
But
that's gonna take a little while. So, that's good. I think that's gonna get most of your attention.
Yeah, I'm just freaking out because this one bug is like I just don't understand, and I'm sure there's a fundamental concept that I haven't learned yet, and so this is really nagging at me, and I feel like this is a major blocker.
Well, I mean, you can always turn off the computer and forget about it.
It's been 3 days or 3 mornings.
Well, I've had not to play it down, but you're always gonna have stuff like that. So but knowing how you are, I know it's driving you crazy.
Yeah, I know it's something that's really, really stupid, like the bug that you fixed that I couldn't figure out with the navigation styling.
But it's go ahead.
The cool thing with open source projects is that you can always give whoever is maybe expert in Elm all the source code for him to look at. So yeah, that's one of the problems of Stack Overflow. If you're working in an organization, is that you can't just go put all your source code on GitHub so that someone on Stack Overflow will answer it. But if it's an open source application, then that goes away. You can just do that. But there was a time I had a really, really nasty bug for a project I needed to ship ASAP. I think how I solved it was I re-implemented the bug. So I did a brand new project implemented the whole application with the bug in it, tested it to be sure that the bug is there, and yes, it was there. I now deployed it, and now put it on GitHub, and now sent the link and added it to my Stack Overflow question, so that anyone who is brave enough should just go download the whole thing and test it for themselves. And it was later I now realized that he had, because then it was, I think it had to do with what do they call it, API authentication in Owin back in the day. So yeah, the person who solved it, he actually went, got the whole source code, ran it on their system, and were able to fix what the problem was. So you might have to do that, Scott.
Yeah, I don't think I have a choice. But yeah, that's it. I honestly, and I'm curious what you guys think. I think I already know what you guys think, but I'm pretty hard headed. I think once the subscription feature has been implemented, then I would be happy to say version 1 is ready. Oh yeah, and once we connect the client to the server. And silence.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a major.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's a major feature of Nikeza is one platform that is agnostic about where your content is at, and so you subscribe to a content provider regardless of where his content is or her content is, and so I want that to be included in the first version.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, but I'm just drawing blanks.
Okay, I was making a statement. That's all. All right.
I know, but I don't. Which is weird. I don't have any commentary, so that's good.
Okay.
So Odie. So sorry, Scott. Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
What you're...
Say what?
So Scott, are you finished with what your plans for the week are?
Yeah.
All right. All right, Odie. So what do you plan to work on next?
So what I plan to work on next is just that is Docker containers, proper Docker container support. Ironically, I'm pretty sure Mitchell will be able to just figure it out like that, because it's like he has a lot of experience with it. But I'm just studying how what are the Docker commands, how do you run containers, how do you create them, and if possible, if I figure it all out, I will be able to make a video on that as well, showing the process of creating Docker containers, running Docker containers, and implementing the Docker containers in VSTS, such that once we push our code, the build pipeline will build the Docker containers and then deploy those Docker containers to Azure. So I have like a temporary Azure account I can use just to do the simulation, pending when we figure out what hosting we are going to pick. But I think that's really where my mind is now for the rest of the week. It will probably take more than a week, because I think you'd have to be a super person to be able to figure out all of Docker in a week. But who knows? It may be simpler than that. But I think, yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now. And after that, let's assume that's done. What next? I think Mitchell just did most of what was in my mind, really.
So I would really like Stack Overflow to get wired up.
Yeah. Okay. Like adding all this thing. I think because we could look at adding like Stack Overflow as well. But like the things I thought of doing, which are like authentication, the middleware, implementing the backends, and so on and so forth, those he has already done. I think the only thing that may be left really is just, I think he has even refactored it as well. So literally there's not much I would need to do. Maybe the only thing that I would just need to do is, like Scott said, is to add more providers, more backend providers like Stack Overflow, like I don't know, should we look at WordPress, or no need for that?
I'm working on WordPress RSS.
Okay.
If you still want to stay inside the YouTube arena of Nikeza, then you can probably do a hangout with Mitch or whatever means you want to do it to figure out, does it make sense to have any type of tests, whether they're example-based tests or property tests, and if it does make
Yes,
sense,
yes,
what are the candidates? Because we got
yes.
together earlier this morning and recorded a session, and we haven't. The jury is still out on what are
What
really
testing
good
framework to
candidates
use?
because it's YouTube, so it's already an external system, and we're just plugging into it. So what business rules on our part do we really need to test, if any? What real business logic do we need to test? Or is there really, do we test anything because we're just making a request
I don't,
to
Yeah,
something in the outside world?
I don't think anything there yet. When we start dumping data into the database and sorting stuff and and sending it over to the presentation layer, I think that's where we're going to have some tests. But right there, I don't think so. We're just talking with outside providers. So
yeah. So you know what? The thing with test unit test is that the moment it talks to the outside world, it becomes integration test. It's no more unit test. So if we wanted to write unit test now, let's just test if it's calling into YouTube and all. That would be something else entirely. We don't have any logic whatsoever. Really, all it's doing is just collecting the calls and pushing them to YouTube. However, it may still be okay. I've still been thinking of this a lot. So currently, there are two candidates in my mind for the kind of test framework we should pick. I think it's best I discuss with Mitchell. But the two in mind are Expecto and NUnit. NUnit test. So Expecto is the new kid on the block, but it's purely functional, just like Giraffe. Whereas NUnit is still, object oriented. So with Expecto, you can have tests inside of tests. You can have tests as values, and so many interesting things. The downside is that it doesn't have any test driver, so you have to run it like an exe, like the olden days of NUnit. So you understand how that works, right?
Well, you can still use NUnit for F#. I have hella blog posts on using NUnit, XUnit, and FSUnit and FSCheck. So
Okay.
I'm not familiar with the other testing library or framework.
Expecto.
Expecto, I'm not familiar with Expecto, but NUnit is more than capable. We could have a conversation on the side about it, but I've done a lot in that arena.
NUnit. I think that's what we'll end up picking, because we have a lot of experience and we don't want to spend too much time on. It's called bike shedding. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term.
No. And there's
Okay, so
FSUnit as well.
Yeah. No, okay, yeah. So bike shedding is a term that was, I think it was called Hanselman, I heard it from, where some guys came together to build a nuclear reactor, a freaking nuclear reactor, something as complicated as that. And instead of spending their time figuring out, what parts they will put into the nuclear reactor, they spent the whole day arguing about the color of the bike shed. So,
Yeah.
so that's what they call bike shedding, where you have like opinions and arguments for something that, irrespective of what the decision is, doesn't really, the weight of that decision is not, the impact of the decision is not significant. So it's best to just pick whatever works and move on, rather than spending so much time on those kind of things. So that's where the term bike shedding came from. So I would have liked to use Expecto, but it's something I've never used before. So I will just push that conversation on the side. But I think from the little research I've done on Expecto, it's a really, really nice framework. It reminds me of Jasmine. Have you used Jasmine, Scott?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so
is that for like JavaScript stuff?
Yeah, it's JavaScript. So testing in a functional language is kind of different from testing in an object-oriented language. So in an object-oriented language, you have your test class, then inside you just have test methods, and that's it, right? So each test method must be isolated, and it must be a unit essentially. Whereas in a language like JavaScript that's functional, or even F# that's functional, you could have tests that have tests that have tests that have tests in them. So you can, like, the word is composition, remember? So you can compose your tests to form larger and larger tests, something like that. So you can write a test for just a single function. Then if the function connects to another function to create a larger function, you could write tests for each of the individuals and now combine them to become the tests for the larger function. Does that make sense?
No, I kind of got lost, but
Okay. Let me try and make it. Let me try and make it simple. See, in functional programming, you have two functions, A and B, and you combine them together to form C, right? Right?
yeah.
Right? So the function C composes A and B together. Now, to test C, you can test C by A, writing all the inputs of C and all the expected outputs of C. Or you could test A, write a test for A, write a test for B, and combine the test of A and B to become the test for C. That makes sense?
It makes sense, but I will argue the value of it, because A and B are implementation details of function C.
True that. True that. But still, I think it still has value of it, because don't forget, the test implementation of C, you're not writing anything, right? It's just A and B that you're combining together. So essentially, instead of coming at it from a black box perspective where you write tests for the highest level function and you're looking for the input and output, there's a chance there is something you didn't catch. Whereas if you wrote tests for the individual functions, then automatically you've tested the larger ones. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. We could have a separate discussion on how much I disagree with that.
Yeah. Odie, do you mind finishing the what you're gonna work on next, so we can move into talking about this, because like we're still on that segment, and
yeah,
I really want to jump into that.
Sure. So the thing I'm just going to work on to make things simple is picking out the testing framework. At least some, because if you watched my build pipeline video, one of the warnings there was that there was no tests. Okay. So yeah, the next thing that was in my mind was to come up with after I finished
that's if Mitch doesn't look, before you do.
True that. I think cool. he has more experience than myself in F#, so probably I will need his input. His input will be very valuable there. Whatever we discussed that time, I think we'll have it. But the focus was two things: Docker support and what they call it, tests. Adding a testing framework. At least, even if I'm just writing tests for the code that already exists, that is still valuable in and of itself.
Yeah, true. So on my end, updates for this week. I'm going to continue working on the promotional side of things. That that means figuring out Instagram, Twitter. I'm going to be working a little bit on the website, the feedback that you guys give me about the members section. I'm going to make sure that I put the content that we have on the website so that it's a one place, so that people have that one place to go and find stuff about us. And also so that, search engines can properly index our content. I'm also going to deal with the domain transfer, and I'll work on the WordPress integration. And that's about it. So I know we have a couple of subjects we want to talk about.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Does anybody know or can comment on the status of Adam? And we already talked about Mitch, what he accomplished. Can anybody speak on, or is anybody familiar with what Adam has been working on or completed?
I cannot speak on his behalf.
Okay.
So
that's it. All right.
Okay. Cool. So All right, we have a couple of subjects that we want to talk about. We got about 25 to 30 minutes left. In order to get the most out of this time, let's use short arguments, and that's just that's just aimed at myself. Just reminding myself about that. So, so, Odie, do you mind continue? Do you mind continue talking about that testing thing that we were talking about?
Yeah. So I'm about to let's head over to Hangouts. So just give me a moment. I'm about to send you guys the link. Probably we could add it to the show notes as well for the Expecto library. So you guys should just take a look at it and form your own opinions. I think it's a very nice framework. I think a lot of the people I look up to in the F-sharp community, they tend to favor it over NUnit. The reasons I'm not so sure about, but it looks interesting. Like I've used Jasmine a lot. I have a lot of experience with it. So I understand the need for it to exist essentially. But it's one of those things that it's so, I don't want to use the word complicated, but it feels like you really have to sit down and really understand and learn it for it to be useful to you. So considering that we have stuff we need to get done, testing is not the test framework, not that testing. The test framework we pick is kind of irrelevant at this point. So sweating too much over that may not be worth it. Those are my thoughts anyway.
That this Expecto, it looks a lot like Python unit testing, where it's
okay. I've not used that before.
Where it's the standard unit test module for Python. It's more about readability than anything else. So you tend to write sentences, rather than test, like very technical. And I get that, and I feel that's why people like it, because in tests you want to have something that is obvious, something that it's either black or white. You don't want to have a lot of details inside one test. You want to have small tests so that you can just go through your stack and not worry about it. And with good error messages, which Expecto seems to promote. So, yeah, I mean, it looks good, and I feel like I know it already because I have a lot of experience with Python. So I don't have a problem with it. I mean, you can adopt it, and we can follow suit. And if in 4 months down the road it doesn't work out, then we can use something else. The good thing about unit tests is that even you write them, you use them, but if the framework is not working, well, I can rewrite the unit test because I still know what the core functionality that I need to test is, and I can rewrite it for another framework. Yeah, it's more work, but that's the process of, I think that's one of the values that we're providing people here. We're testing, we're being the guinea pigs, we're testing things, we're figuring out what works, what doesn't work, or we're using things to tell people, hey, this is the pros or cons of using this technology versus that one. So I would just adopt it. It looks okay to me. So yeah, and I know Scott is too quiet, but I'm used to that, right? I'm used to Scott just because Scott is just very opinionated on tests, which is okay, right? And but to the point that you were discussing earlier, Odie, like how if I have a function A and B, and then I compose I use them to compose function Z, like you said, I'd rather test A and B rather than test C. In my mind, I would just write tests for all three. That's how I'd approach it. If they were if they were small functions and this was just small, and and it was important functionality. But if the important function was C, then I'll just test C, because C is what's going to give me the data I need.
So here's the thing, right? This has the potential to be a religious war. Okay, so
Man up.
I have very, very strong feelings about this. All right. So first, let's start about expecto. I think that you should have the freedom to choose whatever tool you think is best for the job, the way that you perceive that job, and I'm cool with that as long as it's functional. Period. So like, if you choose to do something in JavaScript, well, if it's functional JavaScript, then you have my blessings, right? Mitch he decided to implement some feature, right? Using, I think he said, I don't know, some JavaScript framework. I forget, right? More power to him. In regards to a unit test library or framework, like, I don't have any problems with people preferring their libraries such as Expecto. Would something that I caution on is enforcing that we all use the same testing library or framework. It's, for me, I'm really comfortable with FS Unit, FS Check, in unit, and X unit, right? I guess my question is, do we need to mandate a specific unit test library for writing unit tests, or should it be open?
I would like to have a standard because it makes things simpler to everyone.
Okay.
So that whenever I write a unit test, it's going to be, you can understand the idioms for that testing framework.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't see the value of having multiple frameworks. I do see the value of trying one new framework if it's something that the community is really using, even if we don't have a lot of experience with it, and learning it. And maybe, hey, 1 month down the line, turns out we hate it, but we can then refactor those tests and whatever, because it's not like Nikeza is going to be static. That thing is going to keep changing, and so the tests are going to change to a certain degree. So if we have to rewrite them for another framework, testing framework, then personally, I'm okay with that.
I also support the idea of having just one framework. Like, it's one of those things that it doesn't matter what decision you make, as long as you people make a decision and you stick with it. So even if we decide to pick what's the oldest, I think NUnit is the oldest. Oh no, even if we decide to pick MS Test, right? As long as we all agree that it's MS Test we are using, then that's fine. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't think
That's called the struggle right there.
Because I think that we should have the freedom to pick the tools that we're comfortable with, and also enjoy the opportunity to learn how certain aspects of a Nikeza feature was tested. And so, I think that one of the missions or objectives of the Lambda cartel is to share information, to share how certain things were implemented. And so I think I understand the reasoning for standardizing. However, for testing, I think that my current thought process is we should have the freedom to choose whatever we want. And at the end of the day, they're still written in, F sharp or Elm or anything that people choose. So it provides an opportunity for us to increase our breadth of knowledge on some of the features that one testing library provides that is advantageous when focusing on a certain type of problem. So I prefer to keep it open instead of doing one. And for example, to elaborate, there's going to be some property-based tests, right? In addition to the example-based tests that we're talking about right now. Those have different frameworks. They do, right? We can't force in-unit or expecto or MS tests to handle completely, property-based testing logic. It's not designed for that. So that's my argument.
Yeah.
So what I propose is one standard test unit framework for general unit testing, and then for things that require something more specific, then we can choose, because it's not like we're going to be running this test manually, every day. If I make a change to a local part of the repo, then I'm just going to run those tests, and sure, the continuous integration is going to take care of that, right? The CI server. But aside from that, I mean, yeah, we can have multiple ones, but I prefer to have a standard one in general, just so that I don't make the mistake of writing unit tests for one framework, from one unit test framework, committing that, and then breaking the build because I'm such a huge idiot, right?
Well, your tests are still relying on the dependencies of the domain, and so your compiler is going to tell you that something's not right.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. But I have a different opinion. I think it's important we standardize for infrastructure reasons. So just hear me out. Let's say, for example, we have NUnit, we have Expecto, we have MS test for the same project, right? That means, because my plan is moving forward, anytime any of us wants to contribute to the Nikeza project, we have to contribute tests for whatever change we've done to it. I don't know if that makes any sense. So if someone were to contribute, with Expecto, and another person were to contribute with MS test, chances are that in future someone would have to go and re-implement the Expecto tests that someone else has written in MS test. That's number one. Number two is
hold on. Back up. What? Say that again. You're going to have to re-implement?
Yeah, somebody might accidentally re-implement without knowing that the test already exists for another framework. You understand? So, like, that can happen by accident. That's number one. Number two is that the way I see it, right? Tests should be part of development. So anytime we write code, we just run all the tests. Anytime we make changes, in conjunction with build, we just run all the tests. Now, if you have to run 4 frameworks at the same time, or 3 frameworks at the same time, it starts to get a bit hairy. If you ask me, but what would have been nice is if we had a standard way of running the test that is uniform, server side, right? And to answer, one last thing, and to answer Scott's question as to what do they call it, property-based tests, right? I think property-based testing is on another level from unit test, really. So because of that, I know NUnit, I think NUnit and Expecto all have plugins for FS-check. So yeah, FS-check, which is the standard, property-based test for F#, it will work with any of the testing frameworks you decide to pick.
So I do have a question, right? What is the standard testing framework for F#? The default.
FS unit, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's FS unit. FS unit.
So let's go with FS unit. Why do you? Because if it's the standard, if it's what's everywhere, right? If it's the popular option, let's go. Let's start with that. I guess. Um, and then we can talk about it. You know, we can consider another one later again, because Expecto looks great,
Yeah.
but unit tests, at the end of the day, they serve a purpose, and yes, we will use them, and we need them to a certain extent, but it's not something that we should really think about in frameworks. I shouldn't worry about a testing framework with F sharp, because we're still doing functional, so we're still dealing with immutable data, we're still dealing with pure functions, and so it's not like we're doing a lot of testing, because the compiler is very correct.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So let's just pause that conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
and move it to an issue. Because I want to have like Mitch's feedback and Adam's and like everybody else chime in, and we'll just make a decision based on facts, and what's best for the group. And we can also like say, like, for 3 months we're going to use one framework, and then for 3 more months we're going to use another. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
You can always add another framework and do tests for a certain module using Expecto. And even though it's not the prettiest thing, and it's not something that I would do on a commercial project, but this is open source, and people can see this and use this as a learning experience.
Makes sense.
So,
and one quick thing to clarify, it's actually not FS units. Funny enough, it's N units. I think the F sharp compiler and Visual F sharp, they all use N units. So I think FS unit uses N unit behind the scenes. I may be wrong. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay. So Scott, Scott, you wanted to bring up in the podcast a certain subject. We were talking about this before I hit the record button, and it was bringing some staff. Do you wanna take the lead on that?
Yeah, I'm pretty stressed out from this testing. Man, my hairline just receded some more. Oh my god! I'm really serious about that.
Go get some Gatorade. Turn on the AC.
Woo, almost went into labor, man.
Come on.
So,
all right.
Here's the thing. This is on a different note. I've been interviewing some recent college graduates for a position in software development, and I've only interviewed 2. And the 2 that I interviewed are pretty equal to each other based on the way that I conducted the interview. Okay, and I try to remind myself that these are recent college graduates. The professors probably aren't the most motivated to learn the most effective way of doing things. They probably just read and memorize textbooks and have the same plan over and over again. And they're teaching C++ still and Java still, even though these are aged languages that aren't really constrained as much as we would like to deliver quality software without having to exercise Superman diligence. Okay, so with that said, I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure how to hire an entry-level person, because my expectations probably aren't the expectations of mainstream industry. And the biggest issue that I'm running into, and this is, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I view life as people have what they have because usually they deserve it, and people don't have what they have because usually they deserve that. And so I'm struggling because it seems like with me interviewing people, it's like first come, first serve. Like they don't really know that much, right? And so an example of that is like I'll ask, what is polymorphism? And they struggle with that question. And in a way, I try to be fair because polymorphism is a term. So I say, okay, fine. How would you implement a class called car, a class called tank, and a class called helicopter, in which they all need to basically have their own implementation for what it means to move. At a high level, explain how you would implement that at a high level. And then they're a little bit better. They start bringing up interfaces and abstract classes.
Oh my God,
like
I would just not hire them if they bring in abstract classes. Sorry.
This is what they're being taught.
Yeah, I know. That's the issue.
So I know, like, I'm probably not being as clear as I would like, but I don't know what it means to hire a college grad. What should I really demand from a college grad? I will grill the hell out of someone that considers themselves a senior developer.
No. Actually, I can answer that.
Yeah, me too. I have an answer as well, but continue, Pablo.
So I used to be a technical lead for whole company. It was more technical director for the whole thing, and I was in charge of hiring. And in a couple of times, I had to hire people pretty much fresh out of college, maybe less than 6 months of actual, professional experience, which means nothing because you spent 3 of those months filling out, HR paperwork and learning, their build process, et cetera, et cetera. And so I never asked them. I never really asked them technical questions. I just didn't. I just had a one-on-one talk. I wanted to see if this was somebody that I wanted or I could work or that I could ask questions, about what their favorite language was. And then I would have them explain to me what the favorite aspects of that language were and what they hated about it. And that would just throw some light into how excited they are about a specific technology, because there's people out there who go to college just to get the paper and get just a random job and
exactly
not do anything else. So if you talk to them about Java, right, or about C++, or if you ask them what's your favorite language, and they say Perl, for example, and even if you don't know anything about Perl, you tell them, well, I don't know anything about Perl, but can you explain to me what are the good parts of Perl, what are the bad parts, what have you done with it? And so you start that conversation, and then you tell them, what have you built? And so when you get to a point of what have you built, you can start asking a more technical-ish type of question. And you say, okay, so let's say that they build a blog. And you say, okay, so you build a blog. That's wonderful. So what kind of URL structure do you use? How are you managing authentication? Are you using a database? What kind of database? What kind of SQL statements do you use? Did you use any joins? And so you can get a good grasp of what that person has worked with and the level of commitment that they've had towards those projects without seeing the code. And I mean, they are recent graduates. Their code is more likely to be, bad. And so what you want to know is this person able to communicate well the process through which they built the solution, and are they able to communicate well what technology they are accustomed to use? Because you might find someone who's really brilliant at writing classes abstract classes or writing code. But if they can't really communicate, they're not going to be a valuable team member, no matter the amount of experience that they have.
So let me try to respond to that. I'm sorry, Odie, but let me try to respond to that. So here's the thing, all right. And this is probably going to make you uncomfortable, Pablo. My apologies.
I'm always uncomfortable with you.
I'm being sincere. Okay.
I wouldn't expect any less.
I told Adam the same thing, and he took it on the chin. You know, is in case you guys don't realize. Okay.
Well, in case you don't realize it, wait, I'm Puerto Rican, so I'm 2 notches below you in terms of racial equality or value, whatever it is. So you're preaching to the choir.
I'm not going to comment on that.
You're preaching to the choir.
But with that said, I come from a reality, okay? Not my belief system. I come from a reality of having to demonstrate above and beyond what the people I'm competing with, right? Or let me say this in a different way. I have to be 2 times, 4 times better. I have to demonstrate 2 times, 4 times as much value just to be considered for the same opportunities, okay? So why am I saying this?
Yeah, I get that.
When I am interviewing a recent grad, I want them to demonstrate why. And I asked one of them yesterday, you know, when I was interviewing them. I'm like, what makes you so different from your competition? What makes you so different from all the other people that I'm also interviewing for the same position? And I mean, I'm not going to tell you what his response was, but that's the thing that is really serious, because I know how I can answer that question for any company that I interview with, right? And at the end, they have to really be real with themselves and say, you know what? I didn't hire Scott Nimrod because I'm insecure about myself, you know? And so to make a long story short, I'm not trying to deviate, is if I hire somebody, I want to know that they're motivated. And if I ask you what a design pattern is, I know that they may not teach you what a design pattern is at the university, but I expect that you're so motivated that if you really do want to be a software developer, you're going to know what design patterns are for. Okay, you may not be able to implement one, but I expect you to be knowledgeable and familiar with design patterns. Okay, I expect you to be familiar with unit testing. You don't have to know how to do it. I just want you to be aware of it. Okay, and that's the biggest thing that I'm not seeing with 2 of the people that I've interviewed recently, is that they're only aware of what their college or their university has disclosed to them, and that's only if they were awake and paying attention in the classroom, right? They haven't demonstrated that they're actually interested in bettering themselves.
Okay,
and so one can make the argument that, well, their whole job, they're doing 12 credit hours or they're doing 15 credit hours. And that's something that, yeah, I have to take into consideration, is they're a professional student and they have a workload of other things that they have to take care of, philosophy, calculus. I get that stuff. All right, I'll keep my mouth shut now.
No, but what if that job, what if the job that you give them, the place where they're going to learn are those things, you know?
If you're working with me, you're going to learn that.
Yeah. So my point of view is figure out if this is someone that you want to work with, and don't focus too much on their skills at the moment, unless you're hiring for someone, you know, and you need some very specific skills to ship a product like ASAP. But focus more on the person.
Pablo, I want them to demonstrate that they deserve to be in that position.
Not really. Okay, so hold on.
Go ahead, Odie.
Okay.
So I have a wildly different opinion on this. So first of all, before I dive right in, I want to find out how much time do we have left?
I could talk
cares?
forever. I don't have anywhere to go.
Just keep going. Keep going. Who cares?
All right, good, good. First and foremost, right? Let me tell you the trick that we've discovered, because don't forget, I'm a manager, so I have to hire talent, and it's my word that determines whether or not people get, employed at my office. So I'm going to tell you the things we did wrong. I'm going to tell you the things you guys are saying, and the edge cases where that falls apart. And I'll tell you the trick that we've discovered in hiring like good talent. So first and foremost, what did we try? We tried it the academic way. Okay, so we look at the person's credentials. Oh, this person is a first class, is a 2-1 or whatever. That failed us. That failed us spectacularly, because we got a first class candidate who was so good in quotes, and this guy could not ship a single project. Okay, so that one was out of the way. We said, okay, no more credentials. Let's see if the person knows what they're doing. So much like Scott, we were expecting the person to show like competence, right? Where we would interview someone, ask the person like questions and see if the person can implement it, whether or not the person can actually implement it. And that was able to weed off, let's say 50% of it, but we still had false positives as well, because what tends to happen is there's a certain type of person who goes to meetups, who goes to who watches videos online and so on and so forth, who talks to programmers, who assimilates the lingo essentially. So the person understands how to talk in such a way that would be endearing to you and I, right? You and I who actually do the job. So what now ended up happening was, we got a few people who are very good at talking, but can't actually implement anything. In fact, there's one of them who is still with us now. I'm not going to mention names, obviously, but such people are such that if you give them a project to do, they will keep asking questions, and when you want to like tell them what to do, you guys will enter epic arguments as to what the right way to do it is, and so on and so forth. So that was bad also. So the trick to hiring good talent is very simple, right? You need to look at the projection of that person, not where the person is at. So the person might not even be a software developer at all. This is important. The person may not even know how to do, the person may not have written like any serious application before, but you can tell if the person has the drive and willingness to learn. And more importantly, if the person has attention to detail, because attention to detail is born out of passion. If you don't have passion for something, even if you went to the best software engineering schools in the world, right, you will not have attention to detail. So passion is important. So you may ask the person, I don't know, what do you think about TypeScript, for example? Just very random question. Or have you heard of Python before? Tell me what you think of Python. Something like that. That is important. That will help you understand whether you are dealing with someone who is passionate about software engineering or who sees software engineering as a job. Okay. Now, after that first phase, the second phase that we take the candidates to is an actual test. Okay. So we would actually ask you to build an application, very simple application. Typically, what we would ask to do is an address book application, something simple that just has like, basic CRUD. Right? Just come here, add, insert, update, delete, and you're done. Use any language of your choice. In fact, we're not even going to tell you C# or .NET or whatever the case may be. Use whatever makes you happy. Now, when people submit their code, in fact, we've seen some where they give us PHP, some .NET developers, and so on and so forth. Some don't even finish. That's the ironic part of it. Some people who go through the phase of, wowing us with, big terms and so on and so forth, they won't even finish, meaning that for some reason, the person may know a lot of stuff, but the person is not competent enough to ship products. And trust me, as an organization, you want to be able to ship products. That is what matters. It doesn't matter how good the person is, or the person knows about all these new fancy terms and so on. If the guy cannot ship, you're screwed. So what tends to happen is that some of them won't even finish. A simple project, as simple as that is, just simple CRUD, some don't even finish. Now, out of the ones that finish, right, when we look at the applications, it's clear immediately who is going to be good and who won't be good. For example, when my unit was being formed, right, we needed to hire software developers. So we went through this stage, And we got PHP guys, we got Python guys, we got .NET guys. Remember, don't forget it's the .NET position, because our philosophy is that developers are developers. Carry a good developer, carry Scott, dump him in Elm World, and you just give him like 2-3 months and he'll be up and running to the point where you wouldn't be able to distinguish him from any other Elm person. You know, so a developer is like that. Any good developer, you can carry them, put them in Python, give them 6 months, and they'll be able to pick up. So it's not about the language, it's not about the stack, it's not even about the paradigms. It's about attention to detail, it's about the passion. So like I was saying, we got a lot of submissions, and funny enough, the best submission came from a PHP guy, believe it or not. Okay? So even though it was PHP, he used to write the application, it was neat, it was well done, it was well focused, and he delivered it on time. Now, that guy, we brought him in, so he works under me right now. So we got him to, I showed him the ropes, showed him, okay, this is how .NET works, this is how, Razor works, and so on and so forth. So he was using Laravel PHP before. So moving to ASP.NET was just a matter of telling him, okay, this is what a controller is here, this is how views work, and so on and so forth. Yes, that took him like maybe a month, 2 months to catch on, but now, we can't even tell the difference anymore, that he was not, when I tell people that he was once a PHP guy, they don't believe it. Proof of this is myself. What if I told you that I was never a developer in the first place? I actually stumbled into development because at the time I was doing everything. I was doing I was doing Maya, I was doing 3ds Max, I was doing Fruity Loops, I was doing all manners of stuff, right? It wasn't until someone told me, okay, why don't you think of web design? And I decided to focus on HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And that was my, road into development. So I came at development from a design point of view as a designer. And today, people can't tell the difference between me and other developers because
you are a developer.
Exactly. So, like I said, it just takes the passion and attention to detail. Those two things you can't teach. You can't teach passion no matter how hard you try. You can't teach attention to detail no matter how hard you try. Well, if it's an abstraction, interface, abstract class, or whatever you want, those things can be easily taught. But passion, attention to detail, you can't. If someone doesn't have it, you're screwed.
So here's the thing, Odie. Like, I should be able to look. One of the reasons why. Let me start over. Nikeza has value because I think that it will basically identify people that are serious, period, right? With that said, I should be able to hire you without asking you to do a programming exercise. I should be able to Google your name, and within the first 3 pages, I should be able to see at least 3 items that are professional in which you discuss how to do something or you discuss what you learn, right? Like, I expect that if you are, and a lot of people disagree with me, right? I believe that if you say that you are a professional, okay, period, I don't care what field it's in. If you are a professional, if I Google you, all right, I don't care about your personal stuff. I don't care about your social stuff because I'm intelligent enough to understand that there's a separation between having fun and then handling your business, right? I get that part. If you are a professional, I should see some type of footprint that screams that this is what you're about when you're handling your business. And college grads, like, yeah, I understand that. Well, I'm still biased because I feel like the majority of college graduates, they have a silver spoon and their whole job was to go to school and get good grades. They weren't like me having to work 30 hours night shift and go to school during the daytime. You know what I mean? But to make a long story short, there should be some evidence that you're serious about what you do. And that I shouldn't have to make you do a programming exercise because I could find the work that you've done already. I could find the videos that you've published. I could find the blog posts that you have written. And it's already a done deal. It's already sealed up. And I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to find that with 99.9% of these people that are applying for these jobs.
I really got to say something. We see the privilege that other people have. For example, you know, if you go to a good school, and you know, you're more likely to land a job at some, you know, of the big tech companies, right, and be better paid. Uh, but you know, like myself, I I've started to realize that I shouldn't take those you know, those things. I shouldn't hold those things against people. Um, you know, I don't have a college degree in anything, um, and I used to be a mechanic, which where I'm from is a very lowly job. You know, a grease monkey. Um, but my first job writing code, I got it because I was able to explain to the person interviewing me how to get more horsepower out of a Porsche engine. And he was gracious enough to not focus on my technical skills, which I actually had, but he was more focused on, okay, if you are a mechanic, then you should be able to explain how something works or how you did something to someone who's not really a mechanic, right? And show passion. Um, so you know, I did get the job, um, but we shouldn't, you know, we shouldn't take that chip that we have on our shoulder, and I have a lot of them. I actually have a bag of chips, um, and we shouldn't use them against people. You know, we should be empathetic. Okay, so you have a college graduate who busted, so who didn't bust his butt as hard as you did because he had the privilege of only focusing on school, and you think that because they didn't have to work 30 hours or 40 hours a week and go to college, you know, they should have more to show. Um, you know, I feel that's not going to be very productive because you're not giving them the opportunity to to apply what they've learned, you know, and to grow, right? Your experience sucked, and it was very hard. And actually, when I went to school to become a mechanic, which I did, I had to work a full-time job and then at night go into school for 5 hours, like Monday to Friday. But that doesn't mean that that's the same experience other people have. So should I use that experience?
So let me respond to that. To that. Odie, I'm really sorry. Hold up. So look at what's happening right now. Okay. 1 month ago, we decided to build something together. Do you think it's a coincidence that 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, we have like our 6th or 7th podcast show?
No, because we're passionate, because we're doing this, because we're driven to build the Lambda cartel.
Have even though it's possible for us to have screaming matches,
that's the fun part.
They will be based on passion and not on people not caring. Okay.
Yeah. I know, I will argue because I don't agree with the point, but I still love you. You know.
What I'm trying to drive is the fact that I believe that we are a well-oiled machine. I believe that I believe that I pick people that really complement my skill set. Some are more advanced than I am, and I want to learn from them. And to make a long story short, I hand selected some of the top talent that I believe in that I can learn from. And as a result, we have our own culture. We come from diverse backgrounds, right? Different skin colors, different backgrounds, whatever. But we are all passionate and we all have a certain cultural, or within software development, we all fit into a certain type of tribe. We are all a certain type of breed of developers, okay? The reason why I'm saying this is because I really do think we work well together. I think we do phenomenal as a team, as different as we are. And with that said, I want to hire people that fit that type of criteria, where they just snap in, not because they think like us, but they really complement what the type of work that we're doing, and the perspective that we have. Well, they bring a new perspective and they still complement it. And that's the struggle that I have is, I feel like the people that I'm interviewing, it's a lottery pick versus someone that really just stands out and it's like, yo, this person is designed for this position. No, I don't feel that right now.
It's like you had the 1994 Chicago Bulls, and you're trying, not that we are the Chicago Bulls, right? And then you're trying to hire someone to join that team. I would actually look for someone who wants to learn, who has a little bit of experience and has shown that they're able to learn. It doesn't matter if they went to school, doesn't matter if they had a job, doesn't matter where they are located. I don't care, right? If you're willing to learn and you've shown a history of being a learner and being someone who is committed to growing, then let's give you a trial. Let's bring you over. Let's build something. Let's see if you actually have the technical chops to work with us, and if we have the chemistry to work together. Because one thing you should realize is that we really locked out in terms of chemistry. Like, I immediately got along with Odie because I knew he's a brilliant guy and I could learn a lot from him. Same with Scott, same with Mitch, same with Adam. Like, with every member, I was like, I knew that I was going to learn a lot from them. And so we got this chemistry. And each of us has their own reason for having that chemistry, but we have it. And that's very lucky. Now, interviewing people, you're like to giving you a response at the chemistry level, right? You cannot get a feel for the chemistry of a person in an interview because that person, one, is afraid, two, nervous, three, they probably studied one of those books about interviews, and they were coached at college to do interview a certain way, and at an interview you're just gonna meet their representative, not the actual person, right? And so the trick is the chemistry in software, because it is a creative endeavor. The trick is the chemistry, and that's where we really locked out, and that's a huge amount of luck. I think it's my good luck for the next 5 years.
That's what we attracted. I believe that.
It is luck.
It's attraction.
It is.
I think it's attraction, not luck, because
the experiences that we have done, we attracted each other. I'm sorry, Odin. I'm listening.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, it just shows that hiring is very hard, and you should just base it on the person, what they've done, what they've accomplished, their personality, and is this somebody that I want to work with? You shouldn't dive too much into the technical, because if you ask me right now to reverse a binary tree, I'm just gonna hang up and go to sleep. Right? Because I don't care about that. If you ask me some technical question, I'd probably say, hey, I need to Google that. But now that you know me, you're comfortable to the extent that says, well, Pablo might not know the technical details of that, but I trust that he is able to figure it out in whatever way he finds most useful or efficient. So that's what you want to do with people. You want to hire, like, is this somebody that I think will be able to do this job? Is this somebody that I think is a learner? Is this somebody that I think that has the right, is this person sending the right signals to be someone who will grow with his job? And yeah.
Odie, my apologies for cutting you off. Odie?
Sorry, I muted my mic. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I wanted to hear Odie.
Yeah, please.
Yes. So what I wanted to say is that I think I understand where the misunderstanding is coming from. So first of all, there are 3 different types of positions that we want. So the first type of position is an undergraduate, someone who is supposed to become a junior developer in quotes. The second position is someone who we want to be able to just carry and plug into the team, right? Someone like what's the word now? A experienced developer, right? Like a senior developer or whatever. Someone who we expect has like some basic skills and knowledge. And the third one is an MVP, which is essentially what Scott wants, because it's only MVPs who have that requirement of, we want to be able to just Google your name and see the different projects you've done and stuff that you talk about on the internet and so on. Don't forget that a good I won't say majority, but a good percentage of software developers are what people classify as dark matter developers. So they exist in like the way Scott Hanselman say that they account for 90% of all the software in the universe, but like they account for 90% of all the software that was developed in the universe, but you don't hear nothing.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. That's
so cool. Telling those people that we need to see your things online and so on and so forth, that will be a very tall task, because not everybody is comfortable with putting themselves out there and so on and so forth. Like, I know a lot of really, really talented, smart guys, some of who work at my place of work, but asking those people to come online is like, in fact, there's a particular guy who I work with who's just brilliant, right? Stanley, he's so good. I had to pressure him to release his libraries on GitHub, because he has written so many libraries. He's the kind of person that just invents things. So he can just sit down and just invent a garbage collector or something like that, something insane like that, and he has all those scattered as libraries. So I told him, put it out there, put it on GitHub, let people see the kind of things you've done. And even that, he's shy of doing that. So if you ask him, if you Scott were to interview him tomorrow and ask him, okay, what have you done, and you googled his name and stuff like that, you wouldn't really see much. But when it comes to technical chops, on another level, even I am scared of him. When it comes to like the C# language specification, for example, he knows it like at the back of his hand and things like that. So that's just my thought.
Oh.
But for the junior developer, what I said still stands. So for someone who is just coming in new into software development, who we are supposed to still mentor and train and teach, I think the most important thing really is the passion. Okay. Yeah. That's
and the personality. If there's somebody that I want to work with, that's pretty much it. Because otherwise, you're just going to, if you're looking for someone who's very advanced technically, then you're not going to be interviewing college grads. You're probably going to want to try and interview someone with at least 10 years of industry experience. And that's where you can actually, aside from the personality stuff, you can talk about code. I once interviewed someone who was advanced, and I asked them, like, what's the biggest regret you have in terms of a software project that you worked on? And we talked for like 45 minutes about a design mistake that he did on an application that ended up slowing down the application, and then he spent a couple of months fixing it. and how he fixed it, how he approached it, how he did X and Y. And so, but at the end of the day, he was hired due to his personality, you know, his passion, his how he projected himself, and how he was able to explain how to do X and Y and talk about his experience. You know, it's that's pretty much it. So we have like 5 minutes left. We somehow ended up talking about interviewing, and I think we can do a show or a series of shows about interviewing. Is there any subject that we want to cover quickly before we go?
In 5 minutes?
Well, I said quickly.
Yeah, nothing here.
Nothing there. Scott?
Last Sunday, I think I sent a tweet of me. Well, you guys didn't see me on my bike, but I was just joyriding, and I saw a beautiful view of the ocean in Miami, and I disconnected. I was in the middle of that road. I turned off my ignition, and I just sat on my bike, and I just looked at the water. And cars that were behind me, man, they had to go around me because I was really enjoying the beauty, you know? How do you guys disconnect?
Ooh, that's a good question. How do you disconnect, Odie?
Yeah, so that's a good segue, because how I disconnect really, because I don't really have that much time. But funny enough, how I disconnect is to stay connected. No, but not like how I disconnect really is just I just put on my PS4 and just play a game or two. In fact, I did that recently, and I forgot that all my Twitter and my Facebook is connected to my PS4. So
Yeah,
when
I saw that.
So when I shared the video clip, the thing just came up on my timeline and all that. You know, what I intend to do in future is to just, you know, separate the two. So I have this different channel, Let's Code.net, where I put like technical videos and stuff. I think what will happen is my personal channel should just remain, you know, personal things, random stuff. But the Let's Code.net channel should, you know, just have, you know, technical stuff. So if you're not interested in any of that, if you're not interested in any of my, you know, personal videos and all, it won't be there. But mainly it's just playing games. Once in a while I take a stroll around, but really gaming is my way of like relaxing, because in terms of games, right, like my brain is divided into two. There is the part that does the thinking, the analytical part, and then there's the part that you would call muscle memory. Okay, so a way of disconnecting is to engage that my muscle memory from playing games and all that. So that's how I disconnect anyway.
Well, that's a good question for me. I exercise. I'm preparing now to run a 5K. I used to run 5Ks more than a year ago, but due to personal issues, had to stop training, and now I'm training again. I also ride a bike around town, you know, do 5-10 miles, just half an hour or an hour. I work on cars since I was a mechanic. I have a friend who has modified cars, and so I work on those cars, and you know, then we go around just racing around the whole island. But it's like Odie said, muscle memory. No creative. I don't do anything creative. You know, everything muscle memory. And just to end with a funny note, last night I was particularly stressed out, and I opened up GarageBand, which is an application to record sound and music for Macs. I connected my microphone and turned on the monitor so I can hear myself talking. And I went to YouTube and looked for karaoke videos. So I started doing karaoke alone in my room, and that might seem like really depressing, but I had a hell of a time just singing out loud in my office and listening like to all kinds of music. Like I spent more than an hour singing, and when I told my wife, she was just laughing hysterically because like the thought of me just singing out loud is funny because I'm not really a singer. However, that didn't stop me. Here's where passion comes in. When I was in high school, I was in a boy band, but I can't sing. So you guys figure that one out.
On a side note, I used to rock out to Nirvana on karaoke on my Xbox back in the day.
Smells like Teen Spirit. There we go.
I think that's it, moderator.
So I'm not gonna ask any of you closing statements. I want to add one last closing statement. I want to say thank you to everyone listening. I appreciate all the people who are supporting the Lambda Cartel, all the people that are now following us in social media. We appreciate you being there. One special thanks to Don Syme, who made a special invite to us to go to the Open F# conference in San Francisco. And the Lambda Cartel is growing. We are moving at a steady pace, and this is feeling really good. And no podcast is ever finished without saying that this has been the best episode ever.
It was definitely a passionate one between talking about unit test libraries and hiring. That got my blood boiling.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, but I think it was a very good conversation. I think this podcast is standing out by itself, and it's not like one of those cookie cutter podcasts that are out there in the tech industry. And so with that in mind, thank you for listening. This has been Odi Mekdu, Scott Nimrod, Pablo Rivera for the Lambda Cartel. Have an awesome week. Bye-bye.
Deuces.